Updating. And the video started. Mr. John Lennon, hello.
Oh, hello, hello. How are you doing today?
I'm freaking rocking it, man. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for popping onto the channel here. Now, I do have it under good authority that if you can see the picture of our screen right now, that this guy in the background is actually you. Is that true?
Man, I can't actually see the background of your video yet, but I will find that out really shortly. Is it going to be a picture of a different John Lennon? Is that where this is going?
No. That
Oh,
was that
excellent.
was for the thumbnail. That was just the clickbait. This is the something that actually I kind of expect should be you guys, the Art of War house during the hurricanes. So
Oh, yeah, no, that's actually true. That's basically what I live like. Whenever we have a hurricane, we just grab the old flag, walk out there, have a good time with it.
so that's the life. All right, good. That's what I need to know. These are the important things.
Hmm.
Um,
It's easy.
Heck yeah. Well, hey, so basically, guys, what happened is we were at the WTC. Team America was crushing it. John Lennon was sitting there with some awesome America socks, and I sat down and we chatted for a little bit. And
Mhm.
I was there representing Team Norway, which I absolutely loved, and we were very thrilled with our performance. We definitely learned some valuable lessons. But I asked Mr. Lennon if he would give us his time and his lovely lion's mane to pop onto the channel and just answer a few questions, talk a little bit. So we're super excited to have you here. And thanks to all you guys in the chat for popping on in. If you guys have any questions at all throughout the course of this little conversation, just type them in because we answer questions. That's what we do, and we really enjoy it. Um, Mr. John Lennon, why don't you give everyone a little quick spiel about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm John Lennon. I am part of Team Art of War and a member of Team USA. So for 51 weeks out of the year, I should say, I'm a member of Team Art of War, where we have our own competitive channel. Of course, you can find us on YouTube, and that's Art of War 40K. We stream live publicly 5 days a week. We also have our own private service, The War Room, which you can find at our website, thewarroom.vhx.tv, where myself and my compatriots, who you may have heard of, Jack Harpster, Richard Siegler, Nick Nanavati, many, many more talented coaches are there to teach you about the game you love. I myself am a very long-term 40K player. I've actually been playing for over 15 years, which makes me feel old because it's now well over half my life. But I'm a specialist of all things Imperium and Tyranids. Basically, if it has anything to do with the Emperor, I don't discriminate how many arms he has. I'm into it.
Respect, dude. And so you were the Custodes player this year for Team America. I know a lot of people were expecting you to be bringing in the Tyranids, but you brought the Custodes. How'd that go down?
Indeed, I was very strangely. So it's a funny thing because I've been to WGC 2 times now. Both times I have been our Custodes player, and I genuinely think that WTC this year and WTC last year are the only times the past 2 years that I've taken Custodes to a tournament. I have a Custodes army, but I'm like not. I really don't think of myself as a Custodes player. And then the summer comes along, and America calls, and I answer. Um, how it went down this year was basically that we needed Custodes player. Like, right, we all knew they were good. I already had a Custodes army. I needed to tidy up the models a little bit, but I had the army, and so I volunteered to be the one because we had a couple of people who were floating around for armies. I was one of them, and I could play Tyranids, but we kind of realized I was the only one of the last few that could really play the Custodes. So I played the
Aha.
Custodes, and we let the dear captain, Sean Naden, go destroy everyone with Tyranids.
Respect. Mad respect. I was also really excited to see Tyranids because, dude, Tyranids are freaking good right now. I hear people saying that they're not, and they're wrong. They're liars. Dirty liars. Okay, cool. So one of the things that I thought would be pretty fun. Oh, and wah on to you, Mr. Julian. Everyone here likes to drop the wah. They always feel betrayed when I play Custodes, but I represent the Adeptus Crumpstodes. Thank you very much. Led by the immortal Trajan Valorcus. So
That's
there,
terrible.
there. That's
So
amazing. Don't you dare. That is absolutely amazing. Uh, so what I thought would be kind of cool is if we could talk, just take a quick moment, and we're going to chat here about the difference between teams and individuals, and like list building and in and out, how it kind of changes here. Um, for my opinion here, one of the thoughts that I had, the biggest thought that I had when we were constructing our list for Team Norway, and I think we learned a lot of valuable lessons as we're trying to catch up to you guys, was that one of the things about list building for teams is you have to build list for the pairings process. So, for example, if they defend with Necrons, you can't only have 2 armies that can do well into Necrons. You need to have 3 armies that can do well into Necrons so that you can trap people in the pairings process. And I think that's one thing that we messed up on. So it's not necessarily about building the strongest possible list each time. It's more about building a list that allows you to properly attack or defend based off of what your opponents present you with.
Absolutely. Lists in teams format have to fit a particular role, and it's such a break from singles play if you're not experienced in teams. So, I think WGC is one of the best experiences in Warhammer, but I would recommend going to any teams tournament to get as much experience as you can. And what I find is that you absolutely need to kind of like have traps. So our policy was that for every army that we considered like meta mandatory, like Eldar, Genestealer Cult, Custodes, we wanted to have at least 3 armies that we were very comfortable putting into it, and made sure that all of those pilots were comfortable into those archetypes.
Yeah.
So and then there's the mirror, which we also try to tell our guys, hey, practice the mirror, because when push comes to shove, everyone will take the mirror over a bad matchup.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was a really valuable thing that maybe we didn't do very well this year, but we're still pretty happy because I think we improved from 2 battle points overall to 7. So we're pretty freaking pumped about that. Took Canada to a draw. Victory got snatched from the teeth. We really want. I was hoping to repay them for 1812, but alas, it did not happen. Anyway, we're gonna move on here. So let's just go ahead and take this for just a moment here. Oh, we do have a quick question here. What armies are comfortable into Eldari? I will tell you the answer to that is GSC and only GSC. Do you have a different answer?
We had a couple. So with Eldar, the goalposts move a little bit.
Ah.
When we were attacking Genestealer Cult, we wanted 3 armies that we were comfortable going and beating Genestealer Cult.
Yeah.
Like go play Genestealer Cult, get a positive score every time. And sure enough, in our 7 rounds, all 7 opponents had a Genestealer Cult army. Genestealer Cult did not win a single game against Team USA.
Oh, that's awesome.
No Genestealer Cult player took down a dub. Now, one of them got a draw, 6 of them took losses. But into Eldar, we had different guidelines. And that was, who are we comfortable making a sacrifice into Eldar and not dying horribly?
Yeah.
And then from that point, we had the people who we would accept would die horribly, but it would be worth it. And our plan into Eldar was actually myself as a late defender, picking a table, getting points, sure enough, against England and their horrific double Wraith Knight. I went in, I got a 7-13 loss, my only loss of the event, and we were all very happy with that. That's because awesome. Holding their Eldar to a 13 is a win in itself, because our Eldar got a 20. So we're good.
Sick. That's awesome. Yeah, dude, that's freaking great. I was super pumped just to hear about how you guys did in general.
Yeah, and then Genestealer Cult and Grey Knights were actually armies that we also were willing to put into Eldar and get some good points. Even though we're not always expecting a win in that scenario, we're expecting to get a score, not a blowout.
That makes sense. Actually, Grey Knights makes a lot of sense why you would do that. And I know a lot of people were probably like, what the hell, you guys bring in Grey Knights? But actually, they make a lot of sense for the way you guys ended up using them. So that was actually really cool to see how that all went down. All right, so let's just go ahead and shift this page here. So I thought this would be a pretty fun little thing. What we are going to do is we're going to kind of compare and contrast the 2 different lists that Mr. Lenon and I took to the WTC, because I think they were built differently with different intents, purposeful intents. So we had the Gold Rush, and you want to walk us through this army?
Absolutely. So the Gold Rush is my beautiful Custodes list that I took to both the American Team Championships in July and then the WTC World Team Championships in August. So this is very simple, and you'll notice that it is purely Custodes. There are no Agents of the Imperium in here. So we've got 2 Blade Champions with no enhancements, 2 Shield Captains with Spears. One of them is Bare Bones and the Warlord. The other is a Ceaseless Hunter, my only enhancement that I could find the points for. Then 2 units of 9 Guard. The Guard had 5 Spears, 3 Sword and Board, 1 Flag and Board. And then 3 units of Prosecutors, 2 units of 6 Wardens, all Spears, and a Vexilla in there as well. And the way that this army would actually be assembled was that the Blade Champions always went with the Wardens, the Shield Captains always went with the Guard. I don't think that's true for literally every single matchup ever, but that's what happened in all 7 games that I played at WGC.
And what was your record?
5-1-1. I
Nice.
took a draw against Germany, a tight loss against England, and then won my other 5.
Nice. Attaboy. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Dope.
quite happy with the studies performance there.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome. So what was your job here? Was your job to be like attacking? Was your job to be one of y'all's defenders? What were you
So
planning on running this into?
yeah, so my initial job, like going into WGC, my thought process was that I was going to be the first defender. And I built my list accordingly, where I was going to select a heavy board, pick the scariest opponent that came to play with me, and my job would be to go drag them into the mud and score points out of their corpse, no matter what they were. If it was Gene Circle, if it was Eldar, it didn't matter. I would first defend. Whatever my opponent, like the opponent team offered, we would look at and we'd pick the scariest of the 2 lists, and I would just take it off the field, and I would go fight him and see what would happen.
Nice.
However, the way that it actually worked in practice was that I ended up being more of a late defender or an attacker, because we realized that certain other armies that we had needed that table choice more than I did. My table choice really only mattered in very specific matchups, such as Eldar. I can't let Eldar choose the table. That'll just be horrible. But other than that, other than like Eldar and Knights, I could kind of play on any table in a pinch. So we ended up letting me be more of like a scrum defender, what we call like kind of that sequence of the last 4. In the US, we always call it the scrum. But kind of that very final defender right at the end, or I'd be attacking into other things to either get them to pick something else or a matchup that I thought was favorable.
Right on. And actually, I found the same thing when I was bringing the custodes. Honestly, I just basically never cared about the terrain at all. The only time I really, really cared was against knights, which I ran into knights twice and got terrible terrain twice. But that's okay. So
Imperial or Wraith, you need that terrain.
Yeah, right. So I ran the Adeptus Custodes. So we had a Blade Champion with Caesar's Hunter. We had Trajan Valorcus. We had Alaris Shield Captain. Then I went 2x9 guards. I didn't do any of the shield guards. We had a big conversation about this on the Custodes server when we were running through some of y'all's lists, and people were bringing more shields. I literally only had the shield on the Vexilla. And the reason for that was my list, the purpose of it was to go and obliterate. I wasn't supposed to be alive at the end of the game. I was supposed to go and obliterate things quickly. And Blade Champ would get me up there. Sometimes I'd have to rapid ingress Trajan squad in, regardless. But that was my purpose. So my purpose was if I was out in the open getting shot, I was going to lose anyway. So I wasn't really building to do that. Although I recognize why people would bring the shields. I certainly don't think it's a bad idea by any means. I definitely find that running into, if you're trying to obliterate a Lich Guard squad, you need full attacks. You need full spears and full attacks. So that's basically the way I went with it. I had the 1x5 Alaris Terminators and a 1x3 Alaris Terminators. Obviously, the 5-man had the largest shield captain. Then I had the Eversor, and I had Kyria Draxus running with the Inquisitorial Henchmen. And this was actually amazing. I couldn't have been happier with it. Having those Inquisitorial Henchmen holding the backfield, that Mystic would give me a 12-inch Deep Strike Denial bubble that Custodes just don't have. And even though, yes, it's only one model that gives it, it lets me choose one sector of the map where you're not deep striking. It's a huge yeah, good.
I love the Mystic tech. I think it's very, very valuable. If I had agents, I probably would have considered that. I hate that you have to have the Inquisitor in the unit because it makes that unit a little more expensive than I want my backfield to be.
Yep.
But it is really good tech. Bluntly, my Genestealer Cult plan was to play something else.
I get that.
I didn't really practice any Genestealer Cult. I don't think it's an unwinnable matchup by any means, but I never really had screen problems because the way that Team USA was designed, we had 4 people lined up who were just jamming out Genestealer Cult matchups, and we're like, yeah, I'll beat this every time. Yep. And there's a certain point where I was like, oh, I could tech for Genestealer Cult, but I think the team's got my back on this one. We're not going to bother. They deal with this problem. I don't play Genestealer Cult. We move on. But I love it if you're considering Genestealer Cult or if you're playing singles. I love the Inquisitor tech.
And that's one of the things that I'm actually really looking at right now because I'm trying to get my golden ticket. So we have a big tournament at the end of middle of the month of September here in Norway. It's our biggest tournament here. We got 100 people. It's a 6-rounder, and it'll be the first GT that I'm going to with the express intent to win.
Okay.
And I'm trying to figure out, do I bring my orcs or do I bring my custodes? Because I have a nasty, nasty orc list that a buddy of mine and I developed, and it is pretty gross, but it can't really beat Necrons, which is a big problem. So,
Orcs are really good into 80% of the field.
yeah, but they can't
And
get
if you
past
hit those right
Necrons.
pairings, they can beat a lot of good armies.
Yeah.
But we haven't found an orc list that really enjoys going second against Eldar yet.
Well, I don't, and maybe this is a terrible philosophy, but I'd love your opinion on this. But like, I don't even think about Eldar. I don't care. I don't bother because in all reality, you can do everything in your power to build anti-Eldar, and Eldar is still going to beat you most of the time. So I don't give a shit. I'm like, if I run into Eldar, I'm going to lose. So let me plan for everything else.
If you're playing one of not the top 3 armies in the game, I fully agree.
Yeah,
100%. You can build to beat Gene Circle. You can try to build to beat Eldar. Of those two, only Gene Circle will actually pay off, and you can never build for both.
that's basically how I'm looking at it, man. So I'm right now. I'm not sure if I'm bringing the orcs or if I'm bringing the custodies. If I do bring custodies, I think I'm going to run something very similar to this. I might possibly drop Kyria and replace her with like a Calidus and drop a Terminator because having the Calidus and the Eversor is amazing. That Eversor against
He's a
Finland,
hero.
dude, against Finland, he scored me 39 points by himself.
What a beautiful assassin that guy is.
He was freaking amazing. Hey, look at that. We got Psycho Eddie and Mr. Scary himself. Welcome, Scary. And
Hey, welcome, sorry.
it was actually really awesome meeting that guy down in WTC too. He was a total Chad. Super, super cool guy. But yeah, all right. So how would you alter your Custodes list for to make it into a singles?
If I'm going singles, the most obvious thing to me is that I now get access to agents.
Yep.
The two of those 3 prosecutor squads are immediately getting demoted to exaction. And by demoted, I mean promoted because an exaction is better in every possible way, while also being cheaper. I genuinely think for singles, I would actually keep this list extremely similar.
Yeah.
I think that it has played to Gene Circle through raw aggression.
Mm-hmm.
And with those 10 points, I would actually love to plug in the whatever it's called, Inspirational Exemplar, because it's a great 10 points I just didn't have in this list. Because what I find is problems for Custodes is Eldar on an open board, go fish, whatever. Gene Circle, always challenging, but if you have any kind of skill edge or if you get any kind of bounces your way, then I think you can be Gene Circle. That'll never be easy. Everything else, I feel like I'm fine as long as it's a good table. And then there's a couple of weird hard counters that you want to avoid, like Astra Militarum.
Yep.
I think for Custodes, Astra Militarum is the don't bother because they're rare, and there is nothing I can put in my list to be better in Astra Militarum. Like, there's just nothing I can do. If I get shot by 240 and 8-inch range, damage 3, strength 10, lethal hit, sustained hit, indirect, I'm probably dead, and I'm just going to play with that. And then the final matchup that I think is hard for Custodes is actually Tyranids, who just kind of put a couple more battle shocks in than you actually want. And I think that that's one of the real dangers with Custodes is that if you ever fail the battle shock test, which is very hard to actually take one, and most armies aren't trying because battle shock isn't that good, but Custodes have so few units that if you fail a battle shock test at the wrong time, you can suddenly just die. And so I would really like to have Inspirational Exemplar into a singles list. So I honestly think just trim the prosecutors to exactions, free up 10 points, put Exemplar in, call it a day. No Calidus needed.
Dude, I respect it.
Yeah, I would really keep it the same. I love the 4 bricks I have. I've just found that 4 bricks is so hard for basically everyone to play against.
And that's one of the things that I've been enjoying. So I run 3 bricks, and then the 3 man is more of a flex choice, but 2 is not enough. You need more than 2 for sure. And we have a super chat. Holy crap! This is from Mass Brofect, which, by the way, Mass Effect is my favorite trilogy of games ever. So Mass Brofect, well done, well done, well done. And thank you so much. He says, thanks for finishing the TTS tutorial. More TTS teaching streams, please. I do love doing those TTS teaching streams, and they will be on the menu, good sir. Actually, that's going to be one of the benefits of the Patreon that's coming up. People who are selected, who are members of the Patreon, will be the attendants will be the ones who are selected to be on the teaching streams. Of course, they will always remain free on YouTube for everyone. But anyway, I super appreciate your support. Super awesome. Anyway, yeah, so I love the way you were talking about how you're going to turn this into a singles. Real quick question on Custodes, and then I think we probably move on just a little bit.
Mhm.
The Caladius Gravity Tank is a bit controversial right now. I am of the opinion they are terrible and they suck, except for I don't know. I think they just kind of suck, and I think they're a big trap for Custodes. Just like I think running Helverin's last edition was a trap for Custodes. What is your thoughts on the Caladius Grav Tank?
I think they're really, really good into trap for Custodes. They're such a good profile that they make you want to take them. Last WTC, I ran 3 Caladius. It was not something many people expected. I was extremely successful.
Oh, yeah.
I had a very high scoring 6-1 record with them, and my triple Caladius made a lot of people no fear. And they got better. And so I look at it, I'm like, oh, you just take the old tank, which was amazing, and then you make it better. Well, then obviously you take it. But unfortunately, that's not the case. It doesn't really play the mission the way that Custodes want to, and the meta is not right for it, because as good as Caladius are, they are not nearly as mobile as before, but they're both slower and fly is a lot more limiting. And then I don't actually think that they shoot hard enough to be worth to like try to make yourself a shooting army. And right now the firepower coming downfield is so fierce that they're not doing enough. And once you're getting outshot, it doesn't matter how much you're getting outshot by. Now what matters is how well you score. And Caladius are awesome as long as you outshoot your opponent, but there's no support to take you past the critical mass of shooting where you're a legitimate shooting army. You're just a Custodes army with Caladius. And once you're getting outshot back, the Caladius aren't helping. Like, Caladius are great win more into the armies that can't deal with it. But as soon as someone's like, surprise, I shoot harder than you, are you going to step out and die? Like, Eldar.
Chaos.
Then the Caladius don't step out, and then they're not contributing anything at all.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're now playing with 1,400 points of gold instead of 2,000.
That was exactly my exact thoughts when I initially read the Caladius. It sounded pretty scary, but in all reality, you don't need to be playing an army that excels at short range while half playing at long range. You need to be.
Yeah.
So
they don't contribute to what Custodes want, which is so weird. But they don't help the infantry build. And if the Dreadnoughts get a little bit cheaper, I could really see them supporting a different style of Custodes. Or whenever we get a codex and we inevitably get more detachments, I could see them supporting a different style. But right now, Custodes are an amount of infantry and 0 to 3 tanks.
No, that's actually a really good
infantry.
That's a great thing you just said. Actually, I'm really curious to you. Like, what would a detachment need to be for you to actually consider going away from 4 up against mortals?
I would need it to be either speed or offense based.
Yeah.
For example, if there was something that made Custodes a legitimate shooting threat, look at all the shield hosts that we had before. If we had a way to get +1 AP on shooting, for example, if we were +1 AP shooting enemies within a certain range bracket, half range.
Dread host it. Yeah.
Suddenly, this is a whole different conversation. And yeah, the 4 Philippine against mortals is amazing, and I played Emperor's Chosen last edition for that reason. But all that needs to happen is there's a detachment that gives vehicles a 6-up Philippine. And suddenly I'm more interested in Dreadnoughts.
Yeah.
And if you just need like an Estrat or an enhancement or something that makes the shooting more effective. And now we're cooking. Like there's a couple ways to do it. I don't know what it'd look like, but in my mind it would be building more towards shooting, which means either a detachment that gets like a free, like a reroll 1s to hit, or an enhancement that's an aura reroll 1s to hit, or a pick a target reroll 1s to hit against it. And then you stack that with some kind of +1 AP stratagem or a feel no pain on vehicle strat, just anything like that.
Right.
I don't really know what a codex is going to look like, other than, hey, here's the same data sheets as before. Maybe they're changed, maybe they're not. I don't really know. And then here's several detachments. I don't know how many it's going to be. Maybe there's 3 detachments, maybe there's 5, maybe there's 10. I don't know. But that's what I would look for, is that the Caladius just doesn't support the infantry playstyle that the current detachment is pushing on us, which is fine. It's been a while since like using the plastic GW kits was the right choice for Custodes, so I'm not mad that we're there. But as soon as we go back to being Forge World gamers with Six Dreadnoughts and Telamon, then the Caladius is a legitimately good data sheet once it's supported by the rest of them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I was I was having a blast when I put my all my custodians on the tabletop, and I was like, holy crap, I have a lot of models that I'm not used to having right
Yeah.
now.
Oh, I outnumbered several members of our WTC team, much to my surprise.
So
I have 34 guys wearing gold armor. I was like, oh, wow, okay.
that's a lot of gold, man.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Lennon, let's move on real quick. All right, and
Absolutely.
if you guys have questions or comments or arguments with us, put it into the chat. So this is a big question that I get a lot, and this is one of the things that I think both of our channels are really trying really hard to help fix for people. But not talking about like tutorials, because like you guys run great tutorials. I have a bunch of tutorials out. I've got list reviews. I know you guys do things like that as well, and it's all great for increasing your knowledge base. But what I think would be really, really beneficial for people is to learn how the heck do we get better at Warhammer. And this is stuff like what do we actually practice on the tabletop at actually getting better. I've got my opinions and thoughts, but I would love to hear yours.
Yeah, so my thoughts for getting better at Warhammer is there's not actually one true method, even
Of
though
course
it would
not.
be very nice if there was.
Yeah.
My philosophy is that how I practice at Warhammer personally is by not playing full games, but by practicing like directions and momentum and like pushing and timing and things like that. And then just making sure that I'm aware of the rules that of everything that I could see at a tournament. That's basically all I do to try to get better at Warhammer. As far as what I recommend to most people for getting better at Warhammer is I think the most important part of getting better at Warhammer is attitude. I think the single most important factor is willingness to improve and willingness to be critical when self-evaluating. A lot of people who I feel, because I've been playing this game for 15 years, I've made a lot of friends who play Warhammer. I've watched some friends get better at Warhammer, I've watched some get worse, and I've watched some just stay the same. And I love those guys, but I've watched some people who just do not get better at Warhammer no matter how many years they play.
Okay.
And I feel like the most common thread that I see in those players is people who are not willing to self-evaluate after a loss. So if you lose a game, look at why. Sometimes you lose because you rolled 7 ones and you re-rolled them into 7 more ones. Sure, that's theoretically possible, but let's be honest here, that doesn't happen 50% of the time, right? You can't lose half of your games because of below average dice. It's not real. So why do you lose? Is it because of your list? Is it because of decisions? I find that most players don't bring the super hardcore, like top tier, nastiest Eldar list in the world all the time. Most games of Warhammer are played between someone with a pretty decent list that's not perfect and someone with a pretty decent list that's not perfect. And once you get to that point, you can usually win just by being a better player. And again, if you are taking your painted and named Imperial Fist and you play against 3 Wraith Knights and the Avatar of Need or whatever, all right, maybe it's not your fault that you lost. But when you just lose a normal game of Warhammer against another person, look at the decisions made, look at what went wrong, look at what the bad dice moments that caused you to lose were, and think about what actually caused you to lose. Did you lose because you failed the charge, or did you lose because you were relying on a charge to win the game? Those are 2 different ways to look at it. Attitude is everything in my mind.
Yeah, actually, that's awesome. I think I'm gonna hop in here for a second. Just so I had 2 games at the WTC. One of actually which did make me tilt. And one of the things I preach on this channel is you don't freaking tilt because just you can often just rescue games just by staying in it because your opponent's suddenly going to get overconfident. You don't tilt. You just stay in and you stay in your game. I had my first game against Imperial Knights, which was my only loss. I ended up losing at 0-20. Yeah, it was brutal. So my record is I was 4 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. So this was my game against Belgium. What happened is I had a horrible table, and I couldn't hide everything. And Trajan's squad was visible, and he had 2 Night Wardens, and they killed Trajan's squad in turn 1. I think I had 1 custodian left in the squad. And at that point, I'm like, I'm screwed. So at that point, what happens is I am reliant on perfect dice rolls. And if I don't get perfect dice rolls, I lose. And I did not get perfect dice rolls. As a matter of fact, for the rest of the game, I rolled awful. I rolled horribly. But my horrible dice rolls did not lose me that game. I lost that game because I was stupid and I didn't just deep strike reserve Trajan squad.
I was about to ask.
That's why I lost that game, and I find it so, and this is not the game I tilted, by the way. But so what happened is I made an error pregame that allowed bad dice to make sure that I couldn't salvage that game. But that was not a game that I lost because of dice. And tips to my opponent, he was awesome. He was a great guy. He bought me one of those whiskey infused beers afterwards. He to salve my burning butthole. But it was a really good learning lesson, and I think I learned really really well. Flash forward to my last round of the game of the WTC. I was playing against New Zealand, and I played also Imperial Knights, and I played it pretty much perfectly. And in round two, he came in out of strat reserve and did some things. Out of 16 multi-damage shots, I saved one save. And I actually ended up playing the best game Warhammer in my life and took that back to a draw. But there's nothing I could have done about that. So there's a big difference between getting diced because you put yourself in a bad situation and getting diced when you're doing everything correct. So that's something that I think everyone needs to self-reflect on. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're completely right, and it really does change everything. Where, in my experience, because I often joke that I'm a bad Custodes player, not because I'm bad at Custodes, but because I don't roll 4-ups on command, the stereotype of the Custodes, right? Because the stereotype of Custodes player is that every single Custodes player makes about 70% of their 4-ups, and then there's one luckless schmuck who goes 10% to even out the entire population of Custodes players.
Yeah.
And I always make that joke. I'm like, well, congratulations, you finally found the one. Because I have a habit of maybe losing custodians faster than my opponents are used to seeing them die. And my game plan was that in effect, because none of my games, to be clear, I had some pretty unlucky things happen at various points. That's fine. I had a couple England coaches like shaking their heads in embarrassment as, 5 Shadow Specters killed 2 -1 damage for Feel No Pain Wardens in cover. After I said yeah.
That's a bad one.
I was like, yeah, it's like totally happens. I lost a warden to the orc pistols before they charged. Full health warden, just 3 dead, no problem. Totally fine. Because the way I play Custodes is I put 995 points in reserves every game.
Gotcha.
And my philosophy is like, okay, well, I'm not going to rely on making my saves to win with this army. I'm going to rely on just not getting shot as much as possible, because the best way to roll below average saves is 0. Just don't take saves and you're good. I don't play Custodes to try to tank my opponent's army for 5 turns. If I do that, I lose.
Yeah.
If my opponent gets to activate on me in 5 distinct shooting phases, I will probably lose the game. That's my philosophy for all Warhammer, to be clear. Even if I'm not playing a 4-up Invuln army, like my Tyranids, where an Invuln can barely be bought, I just try not to get shot, no matter what my armor save is. When in doubt, I would rather condense the damage output they have to cause to 2 or 3 phases instead of 5. And that carries me very far.
I think that's great. Give them 2 to 3 phases, not 5. So let's just put this through. So we have phase practice. So when you were saying that you don't necessarily need to play a full game, one of the things that we were doing during our prep is we might just do the deployment, and then we see who won based off the deployment, and then re-rack, redeploy. That's one of the ways that, or maybe we played the first turn, right? And
absolutely, yeah.
So is that what you meant when you were saying basically phase practice?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
It's that, and then practicing when I a lot of it for me is practicing a scoreboard tracking.
Yep.
Where I basically, when do I have to go? Because if I can sit behind a wall for 5 turns and win, I will. Easy done, no problem. No dice rolled, no problem. I'll take it.
Nice.
And then, but how realistically, I sit behind a wall for a couple turns and I come out at a certain point. And timing is a really big deal, because normally if you sit behind a wall for 5 turns, especially in 10th edition, you're not going to outscore the opponent. It's very unlikely to work. Possible, but unlikely.
Yep.
So I try to practice a lot of the timing, the pacing of the game. I like to practice against armies that rush down and go first. If I'm playing against someone who deploys on a line and it's not a tournament, I'm just going to go second and see how it goes. I don't need to know, because I figure if I just play the game, get a feel for how it goes, and then if I ever go first, it's the same game. I just tack a shooting phase onto the front, and it's the same thing.
I love that.
And when I shoot the phase, I don't need to practice what to do against an opponent who's deployed on the line, right? Yep. I know what to do. I shoot them as hard as I can while not getting charged on their turn 1, and we just see how it goes from there.
That's
It's the
freaking
same
awesome.
game. I just get extra damage in perks. I don't need to practice that aspect of the game.
Perfect. So let's recap this phase practice, right? So if you guys know that you suck at deployment, practice deployment. Play the first round,
Yeah.
re-practice deployment. Then attitude, don't be a salty bitch. I think my story should help with that. Listen. If you fail all your saves, it's because you let your opponent shoot your entire army. Don't do that. That's dumb, bad. Now, if it's because you have horrible terrain, don't play on horrible terrain. Or I mean,
Mhm.
so that's just reality. Don't get salty because there's so many times when you can actually salvage. When you can salvage game, then
Absolutely.
don't get shot. So you guys heard it from Mr. John Lennon first. Do not get shot. It's just that simple. But yeah, focus your opponent. Only let them actually get their activations when they can. Don't give them the ability to activate every single round of the game. And then I'm going to throw this one in here. Define how your army wins. So this is a really big deal in list building that a lot of people suck at. For Custodes, for example, I see a lot of people trying to take those 2 Manza Terminators, which isn't necessarily a terrible choice, but they're doing it so that they can have these 2-man Terminator units to be action monkeys. In my opinion, for Custodes right now, is what do they win on? They win on holding primary. And 7 out of the 16 possible secondaries that you can score are scored by holding primary. So, in
Yeah.
my opinion, if I just hold primary, I'm going to score half the possible secondaries anyway. And then maybe I'll pick up a few bonus points elsewhere, and my opponent's not going to score primary, which means I win.
Yep.
Because in 10th edition, guys, 50 points are primary, 40 are secondary. So primary is significantly more valuable this edition than it was in last edition. So define how your army actually scores and then execute that. We got a few questions here. From Mass Bro Effect, tips for making melee more effective with units that are not as durable as Custodes. John, do you have anything that you want to say about that?
Absolutely. So if you're trying to make melee work, you really have to look at one, is it worth it? And two, how to deliver it. Some armies, I don't know what armies you specifically play, but if your melee units that is not as durable as Custodes happens to have the Drukhari keyword, unfortunately you make that work by giving it a Dark Lance.
Yeah.
But for most armies, even if melee is generally not as good as shooting, there is still value in shooting. So I make melee effective by not only preserving melee units and being stingy with where I use them, I like to commit melee units if possible near walls so that I have more opportunity for them to survive if they do their job, right? Like let's say my Space Marine aggressor unit goes and punches out a Viper and then is parked in the open in front of an Eldar army, I will probably not use that aggressor unit again. And they'll come out in the next game, and that's the next time I see those models. But if I can commit them near walls, behind walls, on objectives, threaten, that's how I try to get value out of them. And then each melee unit that I have, if I'm going into anyone who is remotely melee themed themselves, they usually get assigned a buddy. And the buddy's job is to go die for them. And what that looks like in Custodes, for example, is I often will run my prosecutors directly in front of my Custodes. And whenever I play the Custodes mirror, this is what I do. The prosecutors will go in front of my guard. And if my opponent charges the prosecutors first, then their guard are directly in front of my guard, not on an objective and just in the middle of nowhere, and then we fight, and I get to charge. Cool. And if I'm charging them, the buddy goes in first and bases as many people as possible to minimize the swings back. Where I think with not durable, now in a Custodes versus Custodes mirror, it's almost like not being durable because you're durable and your opponent hits ridiculously hard. But if you happen to just be fragile, it's basically the same thing into a not Custodes level of damage output. Where when I play like Tyranids into Chaos Space Marines, I will charge Gaunts or Rippers or a Lonely Pyrovore into a melee unit, base 2 or 3 models, and then charge my melee into the other side of the unit so that it doesn't get hit by the entire enemy unit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll do the damage I can, something will survive, and I will get hit by as little of it as possible if I have my way.
And John Lennon always has his way.
I do try. Not always. Sometimes I play against Eldar. If I had my way, I wouldn't do that again for the next decade.
Dude, if I had my way, they just rewrite that index. It doesn't matter how hard you nerf it, you just go to the next thing. So Paul Mahal and
add the keyword Aegis Sigmar.
Yeah, right. Which actually I really enjoyed that game as well. I recently started playing it. It's actually a blast, but it's a horrible competitive game. Sorry if you guys disagree with me. It's a terrible competitive game. It's a great game for fun.
It is very fun. I play Heat Knights when I play Sigmar.
Aha. How does a desire to not get shot mess with aggressive armies like the orcs? Where do you draw the line? Um, well, I think John already answered that. So basically, if you're playing something like orcs, just I played lots of orcs. Um, you are going to be doing a couple things. One, you don't expose your army until your go turn. If your go turn is not till turn two, you don't expose your army in turn one. Anything that does get exposed, it needs to be inside a truck. Because one of the nice things about orcs is everything's in a freaking truck. So you can have a Knight Crusader that can kill 20 million things, but if it only sees one truck, it only kills the truck and it can't kill what's inside of it. Right? So it's like you force those things to double activate to kill your squishies. And then you hide your army. But so often people think that their go turn has to be you have to win the game in turn one. You don't win the game in turn one. If you try to win the
Yeah,
game in turn one, you lose. It's just the way it is.
I have I have never seen a game won in turn one. I have only seen games lost in turn one.
That's beautiful.
There is a difference.
That's poetic.
I know, right?
Uh,
Good
oh,
one. Um,
do you have
I will
do you have a
say
glass of
that
whiskey in your hand right now? Is that what that is? Is that where that wisdom's coming from? Is there a
unfortunately
pipe?
not. I
No.
only got water.
Ugh.
But
Ah.
regarding that question on aggression, I will
Yeah.
say that philosophy that I mentioned applies to armies like Custodes that are capable of hiding. An army like, for example, the W2C Orcs list that USA brought, played by Lucas Troller, that kind of list tried to do it a different way, which was by consolidating its scoring into a couple of turns. Where instead of like my Custodes army, I try to say, well, I'm going to only get shot for 2 to 3 turns. Let's make it turns 3 through 5 instead of 1 through 3. Okay, cool. The Orc army goes the opposite way, which is that it tries to score so many points early game by going and putting 3 trucks and the contents on every primary objective that its opponent can table it in 3 or 4 turns of shooting. And by the time it's done tabling that Orc army on about turn 4, the primary is 40 to 15 and the secondaries are 30 to 5. And then the other army scores a bunch of points on turn 5, but they don't score 80 points and then they lose. So there are always ways to temper that philosophy to different armies, and with how you want to play it. So if you think that it's inevitable that you are going to get shot turn one, for example, you're playing an Orc army. If you're playing an Orc army with 9 transports, there is no point in deploying behind a wall. If you deploy an entire army behind walls, then you can just take your first movement phase when you go first to move to the front of your deployment zone and be in the exact same spot you were anyway. You are now in the same position as going second, except you don't have bottom of turn scoring, and therefore it's worth. So you do deploy the line with Orcs, and you just plan on only getting shot for 3 shooting phases, and you have to now do as much as you can in those phases. Don't hide from it, lean into it. You hit that gun with your forehead.
That's awesome, dude. I love that answer. So I've got a question for you because I've a lot of people have been bitching and moaning about some of the things about 10th, but overall I actually love 10th. I think 10th is awesome. There are a few mechanics that I think just need to be fixed. What are your thoughts?
I like the core 10th edition rulebook a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think 10th edition, and this is the PC answer. I think 10th edition has potential to be a very good game. And I think that by the end of 10th edition, we could say, man, this might have been the best. This might be the best we've got. I don't think we're there right now. I think that GW had a real problem where they spent too much time fixing the core mechanics of the game and the missions, which I think are great. And they did not spend enough time on the armies. And we are now experiencing playtesting live. And so I don't think that 10th edition that we are playing today, August 22nd, I don't think it's a particularly good game, because we have the army problems that we have now. But I think that we are one extremely thorough balance patch away from having a great game. Or realistically, we're 2 to 3 normal GW balance updates away from having a great game.
I think that's a pretty good answer, actually. And like everyone knows that Eldar are an issue. We don't really need to, just sit here and bitch about it, right?
Everyone knows.
Like,
Games Workshop knows. We'll just see what they do.
And everyone knows that like this is an index. We are playing indexes. As of right now, in all reality, this is alpha state of the game. But the mechanics of 10th, like you said, are freaking awesome. I think it is the single best secondary system that we have ever seen. We had an interesting conversation earlier today during a practice game. One of my opponents was telling me that he thought the secondary system was just broken because it's randomized, but he forgot that it's not. You choose to take tactical or you choose to take fixed. It's not randomized at all. If you build your army to play fixed and then you take tactical, that was your error. That has nothing to do with the game state itself, right? I mean, that's just the way it is, right? You don't. So if you're going to take tactical, you need to build your army to play for tactical.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you can build for tactical, you can build for fixed, you can build for both.
Absolutely.
If I was going to singles tournaments right now, I would probably be building armies to try to have a fixed plan and be able to play tactical in a pinch.
Sure.
But you can win games with bad secondary draws. I had some real bad secondary cards at different points in WTC, and I still was able to win games with those, and you just got to power through it.
We got an interesting question from Jan Chris Plagamars. If I butchered your name, I'm sorry. He wants to know, what about the matchup between the orcs and the custodes? Now, this is a matchup that I find extremely interesting because custodes are the undisputed masters of melee, but I have a orc list, and I'll maybe link it in the description for you when this goes live. That is smashing custodes in melee right now. It is pretty disgusting.
I would absolutely love to see that because in our testing with WTC, we found that our orc list, the USA version, I don't know what your secret top tech version is.
It's secret top tech.
The WTC version that we brought didn't play against custodes.
No.
We practiced that game 3 or 4 times. We smiled and nodded and said, well, we won't pair that ever again.
Correct.
And that was it. We played it once to see what it was like. Then each player kind of talked a little bit about the matchup, thought about what they could do, and we played it again. And then we were like, wow, okay, well, we just can't let that happen. I got to play Orc at WTC in round 7 against Sweden.
Yep.
I'll be honest, the first real battle round, like his battle round 2, he had perfect secondary cards. He rolled pretty decently. I thought I was behind the 8 ball for a second. Still got an 18-2 victory. I think if I had gone first, it was a 20-0 no matter what the dice said.
And Andreas Holm, he's the Sweden's orc player. He's actually quite a good player.
He's very good. He was very good, yeah.
And that's why I really wanted to read this question, because I know some people here get very, very down on this particular matchup. But being a representative of both sides of the coin, I wanted to go ahead and bring this one up for you, because the standard orc list that you're seeing suck into custodes. But you can build a very terrifying list. And let me break it down for you real fast. What you're going to do is you're going to start with a man that I call truly the biggest and the best. His name is Mazrak Skrakbad. And he is a Chad. He is a legend amongst all legends. This dude just smashes faces like it's no one's business. He's going to kill anything and everything, and then he just won't die. Because he's T10 here, he's going to be -1 damage. He's going to have a 4-up invuln. He's going to have a 4-up Feel No Pain. I think you put 4 Helverins into him, and he takes approximately 3 damage. So
he's a jerk. That guy's good.
He is a total Chad. I need to actually re-armor him and just give him a bunch of gold plate because he's going to steal the Custodes armor. And then you're going to splank him with his 2 best friends who are both Beast Boss on Squigosaurs. What these 2 Beast Boss on Squigosaurs are going to do is they're going to be 2% less tough than Mazrak Skrakbad. And they're also going to provide rerolls to charge to your entire army, so you're never going to fail a charge. And they get to heroically intervene for 1 CP. You're going to back them up with a massive unit of 6 Squid Cogs led by a Smashanob. These dudes fight on death when they run into the big Guardian blob, so the Guardians kill them, but then they explode on 5s and fight on death and kill the Guardian squad back. Pretty easily, actually, when you do the math on it.
What unit is this?
The Squig Hogs.
Okay. What's the offensive output of a Squig Hog?
All right, so the Squig Hogs, they have 3 attacks each, 4 in the wall, obviously. They are going to be Strength 5, 6 in the wall, and they are Lance. They'll be at +1 to wound when they charge.
Okay. So Strength 6 +1 to wound. It's a really good number to Custodians. Great into Wardens as well.
It's going to be AP 1, damage 2, and that is going to be 4 attacks each during the wall. And then they're going to have an additional 3 attacks that are going to be hitting you on 3s instead of 2s, because you're obviously running them with their leader, that are going to be hitting you at Strength 7 during the wall, AP 1, damage 2. These are all going to be exploding on 5s, hitting on 2s. Yeah, it's AP 1, John Chris Plagmer. That kills, I believe, 8 Custodians on average. And it is disgusting.
Have to minus some damage up. I can see.
Correct. You have to bait it. It
Okay.
does require baiting. You can't just go out there and just expect this. Right? You
Mhm.
do have to play it correctly. So you run that blob right at them. Then you have the disgusting, disgusting trucks that just tag people in the most inconvenient of places. You've got four of them. You got 3 units of beast snaggers led by the beast boss. Each one of those beast snagging units will chew through 4 custodians pretty
Yeah,
easily, potentially
trucks are
even
beautiful.
5 of them, potentially even a 5-man squad, and you've got a lot of these squads. When you're playing orcs into custodians, remember you outnumber them, and your units actually hit crazy hard into them. If you're bringing your snaggers, if you're bringing your squig hogs, and remember your squig hogs are really tough to kill anyway because they're T7. You have 1 CP to make them -1 to wound. They have a 4 up armor, 5 up field pain, and a 5 up invuln during the Waaagg. Guardians don't necessarily do great into that profile.
Yeah, it'll
Flat
take
three
a
wounds.
little bit of time to kill that.
They do. That list is actually running through custodians right now. I have to tailor it to make it good into other things. That's the list I'm trying to debate whether I take it to go earn my golden ticket with or not. Ticket with
Mhm.
or not. It is disgusting, and we're trying to figure that one out. So yeah, orcs can play
It'll be fun.
custodians, but you do have to build a specific list for custodians. Um, all right, so we've got. Let me just read a few more comments here real quick. Unfortunately, play Blood Angels and Custodians are all over my meta. Oh yeah, Blood Angels. Sorry, there's a guy who played Blood Angels. Who was it? What? But I think at 20,
Um,
it 20 would
was
like
it?
3 different custodians list. Who was
Yeah,
it?
so I think it was France.
Was it
No,
France?
France. I believe France brought Black Templars and Spain brought Blood Angels. I might have them flipped.
Let me just drop me a fat beat real quick while I look this up.
Yeah, no problem. I'm trying to remember because I remember I believe that Olivier Weiss was
Yeah,
the player. I
Spain.
believe that he brought. I think he brought the Black Templars.
It was Spain who brought
Um,
the Blood Angels. Yeah, you're
yeah,
right about
Spain
that.
brought the Blood Angels. Okay.
I know they 20-0'd Custodes at least once. They might have
Mhm.
been more than that if I
Yeah.
remember correctly.
Yeah.
They have a lot of gameplay potentially.
Yeah. Space Marines in general are just because of the power of Oath of Moment. The less units your opponent has, the better Oath of Moment gets. Where Space Marines just weirdly fall flat into a lot of the meta, I feel like they have the potential to punch pretty well into Custodes. So Space Marines is always one that I'm keeping an eye on as a Custodes player. I'm also a Space Marine player, which helps because I have a lot of comfort with that faction. So I'm always prepared for what they're going to do, even if it's not fun for me. But that's one I always keep an eye on as a gold player.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, Mr. John Lennon, do you know much about this ATC tournament circuit that's coming up?
I have heard of it. I unfortunately don't know much at all.
So you don't have the scoop for
For
that.
I don't. So the ATC is the American Team Championships. It's a very long running event. It's actually the first team event I went to. I have been going to the ATC for over 9 years, and I have not missed one that it has been
Wow,
held.
that's so cool.
So over 9 years with the understandable gap in the summer of 2020. I've been to ATC 8 times now. I've won it twice and then got second a third time. Um,
Badass.
but I don't know much about the circuit other than that it's been announced, and I believe that they're planning to hold a swath of team tournaments throughout the United States to make a circuit out of it and generally promote teams Warhammer in the United States meta, which
I
I'm
love
all in
it.
favor of. I'm really excited for more announcements. I'm not much of a social media guy, but I'm actually went and followed them just so that I might get a ping if something gets posted. But I'm just hoping mostly that people just tell me if things get posted because I would love to hear more about it when they post more.
I've got one more big question for you today, and then I think we'll open up to chat if chat has some burning questions. Chat, pop on here if you'd like. So one of the things that I'm really putting myself forward right now is I'm trying to figure out how do we professionalize the sport because Warhammer 40,000, believe it or not, is man, it is an amazing tactical game.
Mhm.
It's fantastic. I think it's one of the best tactical games in the world for a couple of reasons, and people definitely will argue about this. But the simple fact is, Warhammer 40,000 is not balanced, and that is a good thing when you're trying to make an actual tactical game, because tactically speaking, forces are not balanced. They're just not, and they never are. The thing that shows a real tactical mind is how do you win when you're matched with a force that doesn't match up well to you. And that is one of the beautiful things that happens in Warhammer. When we see a person win a tournament, they need luck and they need skill. You can't win a tournament on skill alone because if you get the wrong pairings, you're screwed.
Yep.
So that makes for an amazing tactical game, I think. And I've actually we did a big podcast with a professional League of Legends coach. Unfortunately, my audio got corrupted. So I'm
Uh,
going to have to see if
I,
we can re-record it. But I'm doing one soon with a Magic the Gathering coach who talks about how Magic the Gathering drew money into it. So like you have players who are living off of Magic the Gathering, and there's a huge following it now. And I'm trying to figure out how do we do that for Warhammer. And there's a lot of things that we've come up with that I think actually works really, really well. And I would love to hear your opinion if you've ever thought about this. How do we get money into Warhammer? How do we professionalize the sport? Sport in quotes. This is sport.
of course.
We put a
So,
lot into it.
yes, you can get a little bit of money into Warhammer right now. Some people have, at Art of War, obviously we've been able to bring money into it, and occasionally into events. The reality is that it's very impractical to host large enough events to generate the cash flow from the attendees only. You need it to be more viewable and more watchable. Because that's like StarCraft, for example. StarCraft is the obvious analog whenever people talk about turning Warhammer into an esport. StarCraft is never balanced. It's often close to balance. It is usually more balanced than Warhammer, but StarCraft is never perfectly balanced. All three factions are equal, and small changes to the meta are a good thing. And I think even though we all complain about dirty Protoss players, it's just a reality of life that most of the StarCraft community, to my knowledge, has accepted. I'm not an incredible StarCraft player by any means, but you need Warhammer to be much more watchable and much more engaging. Now we've had that evolution already with some of the streaming that's going on. The GW streams at US Opens are quite good. We have amazing commenters and commentaries like Adam Camilleri and Joe from War Games Live, who were at the WTC. And I think that Teams 40K is more engaging to stream than Singles 40K. Bluntly, because Teams 40K is entertaining when the game is not balanced. Where you can look, I'm just being honest. Like if you look at last weekend, there was a stream of the finals of a major, and it was Eldar versus Eldar. Certain number of people will watch that. More people will watch the best matchup in an 8v8 teams because it's not going to be Eldar versus Eldar eight times.
Sure.
So in my mind, growing Team 40K, especially as a circuit, especially in the context of, being a part of the competitive community, there's not a lot of, at least in the United States, there aren't a lot of teams events relative to singles events. And I think the US has more disparity problems than other countries in that regard, but it is a problem in general if we believe, like I do, that Teams 40K is the way forward. And then you just need general awareness of the sport. So general awareness and making it as viewable as possible, in my mind, my uneducated, simple, push Carnifex into the middle mind, that's what I think, is that we need generally growing brand awareness, which means having a positive and engaging game that's enjoyable for people to both be aware of and to play, and then making Team 40K more accepted by the actual player base.
So basically, you need more Henry Cavill. I respect that answer. I think that's amazing.
That is half of it. Genuinely, is that
no, it actually is.
between Games Workshop social media and the TV shows that they make, and the TV show that will eventually get made by Amazon. Fingers crossed. It's not real until I see a trailer. But all of that, just general brand awareness of Warhammer, drawing more, interest in the game, and then making the game itself as appealing to watch as possible.
Dude, I love it. I think those are great answers. I think it's actually fantastic. I know I had a few other things, but we'll save that for another time. I don't need to waste your time on it. John, thanks so much for being here, man. This is sick.
Absolutely, man. It's a real pleasure to be on. Always love talking about Warhammer. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to pay me to do it. I just enjoy it, but it helps if you do. So no, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, man, this is freaking awesome. I want to make it because I go down to the States a lot. I'm actually moving back next year, so I'd love to make it down to the house and maybe kick it with you guys for a bit.
Absolutely, we'd love that. So
you guys heard it. He invited me.
You guys heard it ourselves. So we'll see if we end up in a good enough space to let that happen.
Right on, my man. Well, hey, anyone just you guys know where John Lennon is. You guys know the Art of War. They're amazing. We appreciate them, and hope everyone has an amazing day. Until next time, happy crumpin', you beautiful